Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Wormsley and Nathan Wrigley.
Hello and welcome to the WP Builds podcast, episode 72, entitled A New Way of Doing Hosting, Really? With Claudio Benvenuti from HardyPress. It was released on the 19th of April 2018. My name's Nathan Wrigley from pictureandword.co.uk, a small web development agency based in the north of England. And I'll be joined later for our discussion, which is entitled Do Plugin Adverts Annoy You? By David Wormsley from davidwormsley.com. Please go to the wpbuilds.com website, click on all the buttons, including the iTunes one, where you can give us a 5-star review if you fancy it. WP Builds Facebook group can be found at wpbuilds.com/Facebook/subscribe to subscribe to our newsletter, /advertise if you'd like to advertise on the podcast, and /YouTube if you'd like to see this episode on YouTube, which is a bit of a strange thing, isn't it? If you go over to wpbuilds.com/win, you can still enter the Smart Slider 3 contest. There's there are 3. I don't know where I got 20 from. There are 3 Smart Slider 3 Pro licenses available. My apologies, I set the competition to end, I think it was today, but that was completely in error. In fact, it's not ending for a couple of weeks, so please, if you haven't entered it, go and check that out. It's wpbuilds.com/win to have a chance of winning that plugin from the guys at Smart Slider 3, and you'll be hearing from them in probably next week about what that plugin does and so on and so forth. So yeah, stick around for that. That's next week. I would also like to say hello to everybody who went to WordCamp in London this weekend. I was there from Saturday to Sunday. I managed to meet a whole load of people that I'd never met before in the real world, and quite a few people that I'd met only online in Facebook and in our Facebook group and so on. But I also caught up with some people that I had definitely met before, and it was really great. I had a fabulous time. I went to lots and lots of interesting talks and met lots and lots of interesting people, but you don't really want to hear about that right now, and that's not the intention of this podcast. If you fancy getting 25% off Main WP, the plugin which allows you to manage and maintain all of your WordPress websites in one place, then go to mainwp.com and use the offer code WPBuilds, all in capital letters. Okie dokie, so what's in store on the podcast today? In a moment, David and I will be talking about Do Plugin Adverts Annoy You? After that, we'll be talking to Claudio Benvenuti all about his new project, which is a hosting company called HardyPress. You might think, what on earth can we talk about that's new in hosting? Well, turns out this is actually quite new, or at least it's not something I've come across. You'll see, check it out, but it's really all about the way that he launches WordPress in a Docker container, and then you fiddle with the Docker container, and then when you press save, the Docker container goes away. So essentially WordPress goes away, and you get a flat HTML site. Interesting idea, certainly speeds up your site for SEO purposes and so on. Really interesting. And then right at the end, the ending facts. This week, it's all about SERPs, SERPs. I'm sure you know what that stands for. Anyway, there you go. That's my introduction done. Right now, I'm going to hand you over to David Wormsley and I to get on with our little discussion. I hope you enjoy today's podcast.
Hello. Today's discussion, we are calling Do Plugin Adverts Annoy You? Shall I give it a bit of background, Nathan?
Yeah, I think that would be good because it's a bit clickbaity, isn't it? And we're not trying to be clickbaity.
No. Actually, this really comes out of a recent conversation because I was listening to the WP Builds Weekly News Edition, Nathan.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You are our regular one listener.
No, it's fantastic. But you were talking about an update on WP Rocket caching plugin, which was my caching plugin, which I absolutely love. And there was a big interface change on that. And when I took a look, it was quite a shock to me because some things were removed, the white label featuring, and it's got some adverts in there. So it's really made me question now what I want for my plugin once again. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think WP Rocket is a fabulous cache-in plugin, but the adverts that they've always had for one of their other services, Imagify. Is it Imagify?
Imagify? Yeah, it must be.
Yeah, that comes up regularly. So it's really set off this kind of debate, didn't it, in our group? So there were some people, I remember Vaughan Simons, he wrote something fabulous. Hang on, let me just see if I can find it there. Yeah, he said, I don't know about you, but I'm always hearing people recommending plugins because of their huge bloated interfaces and multiple ads rather than their slick, simple IUs, and added a cough. And I just thought, yeah, there's a fabulous debate in this, isn't there?
Yeah, I completely get it. I mean, sometimes I kind of rail against the fact that a plugin has put great big adverts in there. I don't know. I've just got this impression that WordPress ought to look this certain way, and 99% of everything that I've installed and added on behaves in that way. It's got the same CSS, for want of a better word. They use the same padding, they use the same fonts, they use the same text colors, and they put up a little nag to say something like your plugin has been updated, go and check the change log, and basically it looks like WordPress, and that's my ideal way of having things done. However, clearly there's a lot of money to be made, I guess, if you are giving a free plugin away on the WordPress repo, but you have an upgrade path. There's a lot of tension for developers there to try and upgrade their users, and so I guess this revolves around that. First of all, should we be allowed to use the WordPress UI as an advert with colourful text and graphics and animated GIFs? And actually, I don't think I've ever seen an animated GIF, but you know what I mean. Or should it be left to your own website? Should we be allowed to put colourful images in there? Should we be allowed things that occupy giant proportions of the screen? And should you be allowed to, another thing which we'll get onto later, should you be allowed to add and remove features without consultation before doing it? So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Who's been a big offender for you? If we just concentrate on the advertising bit, which plugins can you name? Not trying to be horrible or anything, but which plugins can you name where you've seen a whole heap of adverts and you thought, oh my word?
I think one that I think many people will know about is Yoast SEO, because there's a lot of advertising, and in fact there's a free plugin that allows you to remove that advertising, so it's obviously annoyed somebody enough for them to build a plugin to remove that.
That's crazy, isn't it? There's a plugin simply to remove the adverts. I mean, it's a huge plugin, isn't it? Yoast SEO, with probably number one in terms of install across the whole of WordPress. But yeah, crazy that there's a plugin just to remove the adverts. But the thing about their adverts, I suppose, is that they clearly spend money on the iconography, and it's got a cohesive look and feel. I am going to mention one, and it's the plugin that I use actually on the WP Builds website, and it's the fact that and it's to put the adverts in. I don't know if you've noticed, but in the podcast. In the actual show notes, an advert appears, and all it does is it works out this is the third paragraph, put it in there. It's nothing much more complicated than that. But they've got a paid offering where you can do more things, and I've never explored it. But they've gone for some crazy. It almost feels like it's kind of like a jQuery set of CSS. You remember those sort of jQuery columns and tabs and things? It feels all a bit like that, and the adverts don't really feel anything like WordPress. They're bespoke, and I think they're a little bit on the quick side. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be horrible, but every time I see it, I think, oh, that's not really wanting me to upgrade or making me feel like I want to upgrade. That's kind of putting me off a little bit.
Yes, yeah. I do think there's a little. I don't know. Maybe I contradict myself here, because I forgive Yoast SEO because it's such a phenomenal free plugin. They're advertising. That's fine. I get it for free. So maybe part of my distinction is between the plugins where I guess why I felt WP Rocket let me down is because they decided to remove their white labeling option and add their brand into it. So that's not what I signed up for and paid in advance for. So that's the thing. And I guess we mentioned this before. I think you brought this up, is the fact that there may be a big distinction between advertising to us, who might buy these products, and advertising to our clients who need to go into their websites. And I think that's probably what upsets me the most. I feel is if I've got no control over what my clients see.
Yeah, I think that's kind of crossing a bit of a line, actually. I think it's okay. I would far rather that there was a set of standards which people really had to adhere to. I know that's really fussy, isn't it? But a set of CSS classes and things that they had to adhere to in order to populate adverts so that they looked consistent. I would kind of like that. But I think they should be based upon an administrative role. So, if I'm the administrator, I get to see these. It would kind of freak me out a little bit, I think, if I was an end user and there were adverts coming up inside my website that I'd paid for, because all of a sudden you're entering a territory which is a little bit peculiar. Oh, I've got this plugin which does this thing, but apparently there's a better version. Why don't I have the better version? Well, because what you've got is enough and it does everything that you need and so on. And so, my personal opinion there is that it shouldn't be displayed to everybody. I don't know exactly what the granularity of all of these adverts are. I honestly don't know. For example, Yoast SEO, does it take those steps? I don't know. Does my advertising plugin do that? I don't know. But they certainly appear for me, and sometimes I get 3 or 4 of them at the same time if I've just recently updated things, and also I guess the location of them can be weird as well. You can have these things floating on the dashboard, or they might just stay inside certain menus that are related to that plugin. And again, I have an opinion on that. I think that if you're going to advertise, it should only be in the settings pages for the plugin itself, not anywhere else. What do you think?
No, I agree with that one. Again, I think it was Vaughan Simons who said something about the fact he made the point about the whole thing look like, Christmas lights in Oxford Street if everybody is allowed to sort of create their own or garnish the interfaces as they like. But I think that's also a difficulty if you're moving from one plugin settings to another. It may be a beautiful job that they've done, and particularly WP Rocket have in that case. It is a beautiful design that they've made, but it's their colors, their branding that's in there. And if you go to another settings page and they do similar, the whole experience of being in the back end of WordPress is going to be very confusing, I believe, to clients.
Again, not to hark back, but I do this periodically. I talk about Drupal, and in Drupal, because everything is free, everything, broadly speaking, everything obeyed that UI because there was the one UI, and it isn't as attractive as WordPress's UI at all. The attention to detail is not as great, but it was utterly consistent. So everything was laid out with the same size fonts and the same coloured fonts, and spacing and padding all looked the same, and there was no garish adverts for upgrades because there was simply no way of doing it. And then when I moved to WordPress, I saw those, and you get settings pages just like you've said with the WP Rocket. They've done a great job. It looks lovely. They've got all sorts of fun stuff, and I can think about things like iThemes, iTheme security with the way that looks. It looks really nice, but it just sort of creates confusion if you're not in there all the time and you're just dipping in once in a while. Right, I know that company have got a vested interest in making it look as attractive as possible, but sometimes I think consistency should trump beauty, if you know what I mean. And nobody could argue that a default install of WordPress is well, I don't think you could argue that it's ugly, because it isn't. It's really well thought out and clear, and millions of users can't be wrong.
Yes. Well, it's clean, isn't it? And it's minimal. And I think everyone should take the lead from how that looks for their plugin. I think it depends. We are talking from the perspective of the clients who buy licenses from plugin developers for unlimited generally, so we can serve all of it. And we are maybe very, very different from, and we've no idea what plugin developers get their business from, whether they get them from single licenses and they do need to keep advertising other services, or whether they get them from us. But I think there needs to be that distinction if we're to move forward. Everybody just can't be blasting the place out with adverts as they want.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, sometimes I'll log into a site that I haven't, because I use main WP increasingly to manage my sites. I don't often go in the actual WordPress backend, the WP-admin. Don't often go in there. And then sometimes you do go in, and lots of nags have built up over time, and lots of these upgrades have happened, and the little nags still haven't been dismissed. And so you end up having to trawl through about 6 of them and make them all go away. And it's really obvious which ones have been well thought through. The fact of the matter is, though, there must be a purpose for them. They must pay for themselves. Otherwise, these companies wouldn't do it. If the feedback was invariably, nobody's clicking on these things, everybody's annoyed by them, nobody likes them, they would stop doing it, surely. Presumably, and again, sort of contradicting everything that we've said so far, I guess we have to have a great deal of sympathy, for want of a better word, for people who make these plugins, because we've no idea of their circumstances, and we've no idea of how much work they put into giving away their free stuff. And this may be the only shot they've got of getting somebody to put some money in their back pocket, and they may not have the skills in graphic design to make them look attractive. They may not have the time to spend on doing the WordPress UI, because they've got time only for building the plugin, so they just slap something together and it works, and off they go. So yeah, maybe we need to be a little bit sympathetic there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I wonder, though, whether people just try stuff out and that we have it because it works. Because one thing that I still see regularly, but I've heard so many times before, and that is the donation thing. People very, very rarely give donations for free plugins, but I still see them appearing in new plugins, even though they're not going to work. I think each new person coming to it thinks it may work for them, but it generally doesn't. And,
no.
So I think that a lot of it maybe is in there because it's following a fashion rather than actually is working. And I think the biggest asset to all of the plugin developers is the tribe of us who go out there and promote it, particularly the people like us who build websites for clients. When we get into our Facebook pages and we really love a service, we do so much promoting for them. So it's really important that they don't let us down, I feel.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's amazing the power of just one comment from somebody in authority in a Facebook group that can kind of sweep sweep a lesser known plugin right to the top of everybody's mind in a matter of days, and you can have the reverse effect as well. You can downgrade, and that seems to be what's happening at the moment with your experience with WP Rocket. It seems to have annoyed not just you, but a fair bunch of other people as well. Speaking of which, one of the things that got you about that was the so we're not really talking about advertising now. We're moving the discussion on to upgrading, downgrading features, removing features, adding features, clicking features on by default. Have you had this happen to you a lot, apart from this one?
Yeah, it's not been too much of an issue, but I do find myself questioning, what there's a real pressure I feel at the moment, and I see it in the Facebook groups that we're on, is for developers to constantly, particularly if there's a subscription model, to keep adding new stuff for people to feel they've got value each year. And for some people, and I think I'm one of those, it actually can cause problems. So typically, one thing I will moan about is if, say, something like Beaver Builder module packs add some new module to it that is not automatically turned on when it comes out.
Yep.
Now, I think people have been sympathetic. They heard that kind of talk going on earlier on, but the natural inclination was to put that out there, the new stuff, let people know it's there, put it in the UI for folks. So I think there's a pull there, even in our own communities. People want more stuff, but others with the same plugin, paying the same money, would rather they didn't have so much coming.
Yeah, the cautious side of me, and my cautious side usually wins, especially with upgrading plugins and things. Typically I'll back everything up before I touch any plugin update, no matter how small, whether it's a point release or not. It would I just think it makes no sense to add a new feature and switch it on, because who knows what is going to go wrong. For me, the path should always be upgrade the plugin, email everybody in your database about the the what's it called, the something log, the change log,
change log, yes.
and then also see, this is where I think there's a good place for an advert, is put a little WordPress styled nag in after the plugin has been updated, and this is something that iThemes security do, and I think they do it quite well. They'll say iThemes security has just been updated, have a look at the changelog, and that's it, and you can dismiss that or look at the changelog, and I obviously go in and look at the changelog and see, is there anything in here which is of importance, is there anything massive. Now my experience is that they don't switch things on by default, but I just don't think you should switch things on by default. And there's all sorts of clever ways nowadays, isn't there? For you buy a new SaaS product, and the first time you log in, you're guided around with little flashing icons saying, "Okay, click me." That kind of stuff can be deployed quite effectively. I know that's a lot of extra overhead and a lot of work, so probably it's not worth it for a lot of these plugins. But illustrating what's been changed is very helpful, and then at least you can start to figure out what's gone wrong if things do go wrong.
Do you know, there's one that's coming up very soon, Beaver Builder one. They're changing their naming convention, so where it used to say Page Builder, it's now going to be saying in the next release Beaver Builder. And that's interesting as well, because my personal feeling is I liked Page Builder because it described to clients what it is, because they don't know, they're not expecting to build a beaver. They are expecting perhaps to build a page, so they know what it is. And but it's really interesting. I heard completely the opposite, saying that makes so much sense to do that, not just from an advertising point of view.
From a sort of business point of view, I suppose, with the increasingly competitive landscape that they're in, I guess making people aware, because you just don't know, do you, what word of mouth goes on. If somebody, an inexperienced WordPress user, says, "Oh yeah, we can build our pages in a few seconds. Yeah, we got this thing. It's Beaver Builder," it says, and then that might launch somebody finding them for the first time. Whereas if it's just generically Page Builder and you Google Page Builder, well, we all know that'll lead to lots and lots of different results of differing qualities. So I can see why they're doing it, but I can also see it's less descriptive, because it doesn't. Yeah. Even if it said Beaver Page Builder, that might be more descriptive. But then, of course, it's getting too long.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And the WP Rocket one, why I used their white labeling was typically just to change it to cache rather than WP Rocket, because from a client point of view, they needed to clear the cache when things weren't looking right. So for them, it was about their layout, not about the speed, which is what the plugin does. Gives them greater speed. So it was hard for them to make the connection WP Rocket speed. Cache was much easier once I got that concept into their minds, because they would know it through me talking to them about clearing a cache on their browser. So there are things like that where I do think that descriptive seems, or not necessarily so, but just allowing us as developers who manage client sites, I just think it would be so much nicer if we were able to control that kind of thing.
Do you ever go to the lengths of actually rewriting how WordPress outputs those links in the admin menu? Do you ever go and create a function to change the name of WP Rocket to cache? Do you ever do that kind of stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, I have done it actually. I've used the text translate, whatever that's called, something that I put into the child theme, to change the names. But I've run into problems if there's commonly used terms or something that could be used somewhere else. And I don't have the developer skills to do this properly, so that's probably,
I think I've done it in the past where I've worked out which div it sits in, and nth child and that kind of stuff. Can't remember how I did it, but then that is fraught with problems because it just needs to be moved and it breaks. Something gets installed over the top of it, and seem to remember that happening. I guess it's like television or anything. These adverts are they're a necessary evil, if that's. Nobody wants television programs to be stopped by adverts. Nobody wants adverts at the beginning, adverts, not trailers, adverts when they go to watch a movie. but they help pay for things to happen. So we put up with them because we realise that's the model we live in. And I expect it's the same here. Plugins are going to have adverts because they need it to support themselves. But I guess from my point of view, it'd be nice if they all looked really nice.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess it's that I don't. It's not that I don't want adverts to be there, but I just wonder if they're picking the most effective way. As I say, in fact, we're updating from main WP, so a lot of the time I'm not seeing the adverts, and I'm the most likely person to buy something. Where my clients are seeing them and they're not going to buy it. It's just as simple as that. So I do wonder whether it needs rethinking about. And I think plugin developers perhaps ought to talk to some of their clients, particularly the users like us, the implementers who rely on their skills to be able to sort of pass their work on to our clients, how they might best reach people. So I'd love that conversation to be had.
Do you know what we should have? We should have a WordPress default in core page in the admin called offers, and all of the plugin developers shove their stuff inside the offers page, and you get the little red circle which says 2 offers. Get 50% off updating your. Nobody would look in that page though, would they? That's a stupid idea. Right, I think we've done this one, David.
I agree. Yes.
In which case,
interview.
Yes, we shall pass us over to the interview. And we've started now the interview part of the podcast. And today we have something quite unique and a little bit interesting because I've got Claudio Benvenuti from HardyPress. So hi there, Claudio. How are you?
Hi, Nathan. Very fine. Thank you.
Good. Now, the reason that Claudio is on is because a month or so ago, and I don't remember who did this, but somebody came into my Facebook group, or the Facebook group for this podcast, I should say, and posted about HardyPress, which is your platform, and said, "Have you ever seen anything like this? Go and take a look." And I clicked on your website, HardyPress. It's HardyPress, HardyPress.com. And I found myself looking at something which it looked like a hosting company. I thought, this is normal stuff. And then I looked at the words on the website and it said unbreakable websites 10 times faster. And I thought, wow, boy, how are they doing this? And I explored a little bit further and discovered that you've built a platform to put WordPress installs on, which is very different to the normal hosting. Could I ask you, how does your product actually work? And, why would WordPress developers and site builders like me want to use it?
Yeah, of course. HardyPress is as you said, is a special WordPress hosting service that aims to free webmasters from performance, security, and scalability issue of WordPress websites. We do this by combining the benefits of WordPress, easy of installation, easy of use, huge plugin ecosystem, and so on. We combine this with the benefits of a static site generator, namely security and performance.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there. Carry on.
No, just ask.
Well, I was going to say, at this point, you mentioned the word static. That's the crucial difference, I think, in what you're doing. Do you want to develop on that a little bit more? And I'm sorry if I interrupted.
Of course, no problem. The dynamic part of the architecture for the most sites is only really exploited by the admins while navigating in the back end of the WordPress, using WordPress dashboard, editing article, and so on. The public-facing website very often doesn't have any real dynamic feature, but visitors undergo a dynamic architecture anyway that only produce negative effect on their experience. So slowness, instability, potential vulnerabilities, and so on. So, the HardyPress way to simplify things is to use WordPress as a static site generator, as simple as that.
Yeah.
It works like a bit like a web crawler, to understand, starting at the main page of the website and looking for links to the other page and create static copy of it. Obviously, we also include images, CSS, JavaScript, and any other files we can find a link to it. In addition, we take care of optimize this site for SEO. We make contact form running well even on the static site, and we augment the search box to provide instant suggestion to visitors, even if the final site is static. I mean.
Okay, so I'll unpack that a little bit, and you can see some nice diagrams on the website. They've got a nice sort of way of explaining this through some sort of diagrams and what have you. Basically, rather than... So what you're saying is that in a normal install of WordPress, the admin needs to have the interactive functionality and all the PHP needs to trigger and work, but the end user doesn't really. They just want to see the page, and the page is HTML. But of course, WordPress doesn't have the capacity to just produce HTML. It has to produce HTML through the whole process that WordPress goes through, and so it takes time. You know, every single page link that you click on, it has to query the database, construct the page, throw it all together, and depending on the kind of hosting that you've got, that can take time. If you've got a poor quality machine, bad CPU, low bandwidth, and all of that kind of stuff, those queries can take a few seconds, and obviously every second that you add on is going to negatively impact your SEO. Whereas you crawl the site, construct just the HTML that you need, and then you create a completely different website. Separate the back end of WordPress from the site that the end user sees, and all you serve up is a flat HTML file.
Yeah, it's true. Basically, when you create a new website on HardyPress, you got two websites. One Dynamics website where we host your WordPress installation with the benefits that you can turn WordPress on and you can switch it off anytime. So most of the time, your WordPress simply does not exist. There is no PHP, no database, nothing that can break. Then, when you switch your WordPress on, you can use it like you are used to do. When you finish your editing, you can create a static version of your front-facing website just within a click. In this exactly moment, we start crawling your websites, and we push the generated static content online on a CDN, and we switch your WordPress off. So it's basically quite different from caching plugins.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There are mainly two differences from caching plugin. The first one is regarding the speed of the website. Okay. The classic way to optimize the website is usually to have a CDN hosting the assets, images, CSS, JavaScript, and a cache layer on top of the web server. Okay. In this way, you can have a quite good performance. But the fact is that, for example, China's visitors still need to fetch the HTML page from your server in California, for example. The server response will be good because you have a caching plugin doing his job. The assets will be served fast because you have Cloudflare on it. But the call to retrieve the original HTML page from China to California is going to be very far from optimal because of the distance. I mean, this is a relevant factor for CEO. Okay. This is the first difference. The second difference is about security. I mean, a caching plugin is built to caching your contents, but you still need to have your WordPress live somewhere. Okay, so you need to have upgrade plugin, upgrade the core. You have to be careful. Your WordPress can be hacked anytime. With HardyPress, basically you can hide your WordPress installation. You can switch it off when you don't need it. Okay, your WordPress only runs when an editor logs into the WordPress dashboard to make some changes. For the rest of the time, as I said, there is no PHP, no MySQL, nothing that can break.
So if if I was to go to my HardyPress install of WordPress and try to access, let's say /WP WP -admin, unless it was switched on, literally nothing would be there. There would be no page, no PHP getting, no database queries, nothing.
No, you just find out 404 error.
Yeah,
File not found.
Okay, right. So what I'm quite interested in the technology. So what from a technical point of view, what is the stack of technologies that you're using? Like you described it as you were going out and almost like like a Google bot or something, going around crawling the pages. Presumably, you've had to build this yourself. And then what do you use to sort of switch WordPress on and switch WordPress off? And do you store? Sorry, there's many questions here, but do you store just flat HTML files? How does it technically work? I'm very interested.
Okay, it's quite complicated. I'll try to explain it as better as I can. First of all, we are an hosting company, but the weird things about HardyPress is that we don't own any server. Okay, all our infrastructure.
Perfect. Yeah.
Is entirely built on the cloud. Currently, is on Amazon AWS.
Yep.
Which allow us obviously to minimize the risks and the cost of server management, and also allow us to scale quite easily. On top of that, we use Docker to bring WordPress to life when it's needed. And we use Swarm as orchestration system to ensure a very high level of isolation and security between websites that runs on it. To make it simple, when you turn WordPress on HardyPress, what we do is to fire up a Docker container with all your data. So what you are facing is a real WordPress installation that is running on our cluster environments. Is a sort of staging environment where you do changes, you do all the stuff you usually do on WordPress. But this WordPress only runs on a completely random generated subdomain, hardly to guess, and can be protected by basic outs also.
Okay.
So you can switch WordPress on and use WordPress like you are used to do. You can switch WordPress on in two ways. You can enter the HardyPress dashboard and click a simple switch.
Yep.
There's a button switch. Let's say just switch your WordPress on. You click on it, and your WordPress bring to life. The other way is using our special login page for each website. We have a special login page because, as you said, the classic WP login.php does not exist because WordPress is off. Okay. Yep. So if you are an agency, how your clients could log into WordPress? Okay. We have, as I say, this special page that you can give to your clients. They just insert the username and the password of the WordPress user. And if the user is a valid user, we bring WordPress to life and we push the user in the dashboard.
Right.
Okay, so it's quite transparent for them.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds fascinating. And presumably, you guys built a lot of the infrastructure surrounding the switching on of the Docker container and all of that kind of stuff for this platform. You guys have done that. Yeah, that's really clever stuff. How long does it take for me to click the button and the Docker container to instantiate and come to life? What's the lag between pressing the button?
Currently is like 4 or 5 seconds.
Oh, really? Nothing.
Yeah, it's fast. Yeah. The create a static version can take longer.
Yes,
because it strictly depends on the size of the website.
Yes. I was going to ask, that was my next question. So if I was to log in, and let's say that I'm a very simple site, and all I do when I'm in the Docker container is create, let's say, one new post, and then I'm finished. Do I have to initiate the bot to crawl, or do I just log out and that's all automatically handled? And how do you get on with that job of crawling the website immediately so that page comes live, or does the page, when I create the page, does that in some way tell your system, look, there's a new page, go crawl it now?
No, currently you have to trigger a new deploy, a new static size version of your website. This is, we see this as a feature because you can have a staging environment where you can test your website without affecting the live website.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so you have this development area for free. It's included in the technology. You can use your WordPress, test your WordPress. Only when you want to publish the content on the CDN, you trigger the switch. What we do automatically is to switch off your WordPress. If you forget to switch it off, the WordPress is switched off automatically after 15 minutes of inactivity.
Okay.
So we are monitoring always HTTP traffic to see if there is some activity on the WordPress dashboard. We also monitoring the SFTP traffic because we give you access on SFTP.
Oh, cool.
So if there is no traffic, after 15 minutes, the WordPress is switched off.
Right. So, and at that moment, your technology, the other aspect, the crawling aspect begins immediately, does it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It starts when you push your button, publish website on the CDN, and we start crawling the website.
Okay. So if I was to, let's say that I was in the dashboard and I needed to nip out, and 15 minutes passed, but I had published a post during that time, and I walked off and didn't come back, and my WordPress install has gone to sleep, if you like. Is that post and everything gonna be, I know it'll be saved in WordPress, I'm imagining, because the database and everything will have been updated. Will it, presumably I will have to go back in, click whatever the button is marked for, go crawl it now. Okay.
Yeah, this is the way we work.
Yeah, that's just how it goes, and presumably, like everything else, you just get into it and you kind of work it out. That's really, really fascinating. What I'm interested to know is, if, let's say I had a site with 100 pages. Let's take that as a starting point. How long after I've clicked the button and you've gone out to crawl it, roughly speaking, how long would it take for that site to be modified and updated so that my new posts have become live?
For a small website, is quite fast. There is about 1 minute, maybe, maybe less, from when you push the button to see your changes live on the CDN. It's less than a minute. Anyway, there is a problem with the editorial website with thousands and thousands of articles.
Yes.
Because the only way we have to create a static copy is to crawl all the websites.
Right.
Because, when you create a new article, maybe you have a widget on your sidebar with the last post. So maybe all your pages are affected from your change. So we need to crawl every single page every single time.
I see.
Yeah.
So a giant site with 150,000 posts and 1,000 pages, perhaps this isn't for you.
No, it's not. The user is going to have a less than optimal experience for this kind of website.
That's nice to know, though, isn't it? It's good that you know who your customer is. It's somebody who has a medium to small website, presumably somebody who isn't fiddling with it every minute of the day. Goes in frequently, but not all the time, modifies things, and then just leaves it well alone. And in exchange for that customer, you will serve them up something really, really fast. So I guess that's a good question at this point. Yeah. Typically, how long does it take from me typing in the URL on a website that you host? How long is it going to be typically until I receive the entire payload back?
We have to
that's a bad question, isn't it?
Yeah, because there are several.
So many things going on.
You can run several tests on it. There is a thing that is called first byte, time to first byte.
Yeah, time TTL. Yeah, TTL.
Yeah, TTL. This is going very, very, very fast because all your content, even as I say, the HTML is under a CDN with 30 servers. So you're going to receive the first byte in less than 5 milliseconds. Okay.
Yeah. Wow.
You can wherever you are. I mean, I'm just looking at a test. We have 2 milliseconds from US, 2 milliseconds from Europe, US Est. Sorry, 25 milliseconds from London, 2 milliseconds from Japan, 3 from Sydney, 79 from Singapore, 100 from Sao Paulo, and so on. Okay, this is a test. Another test you can run on your website is something like Pingdom. Okay.
Yes.
But this is a bit different because mainly Pingdom monitor what the developer do on their websites. Okay, so if your homepage, for example, if your homepage is 20 megabytes, there's no hosting that can solve this problem. Okay, so you have to take care of use a good paradigm to develop your homepage. So you have to follow the best practice.
Yes, of course, yeah.
What we do some optimization for SEO, like automatically we minify JavaScript and CSS.
Okay.
We set browser leverage cache automatically.
Yep.
We host the files under CDN. So we do some stuff. But if you want a fast website, we can do what we can do. We do what we can do, but you have to put some effort on it as well.
Yeah, it was a silly question really because there are so many variables. I think what I'm sort of trying to say is, if you don't have 25 megabyte images and videos coming in from YouTube all over the place, and you've just got some text and a few fairly reasonable images, and you've got all those on the CDN, and you're serving up that, it's going to be quicker. There isn't two ways about it. So long as your technology works, it is going to be quicker. One question about that is, what does the URL look like? Is it a .html file that you're giving us?
Your permalink structure is the same you have on WordPress.
Okay,
it doesn't change.
No,
we handle the redirection from one page to another, even on the static website.
Okay.
Because this is the main problem from the static website on a serverless technology is that a static website usually doesn't have a server. Okay, it's a serverless technology.
Bunch of files, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's difficult to use 301 redirect, for example, on set the correct content header type. Okay, we manage to do this because we host the static website on a S3 bucket.
Yep.
Okay, so we can configure some stuff, and we put a CDN in front of it.
Yeah. Okay. I think everybody listening to this, our audience are technical, and I think they'll understand what it is that we're describing. It's really fascinating. One thing I'm interested in is, are there situations when your platform, we described earlier about a very, very large site is not suitable because your technology needs to go out and crawl it, and that's a problem. Are there any other situations where you would advise somebody, actually, no, we're not suitable? I'm thinking, for example, of sites where the interactive nature of the database is completely crucial. So, for example, I might be thinking of a WooCommerce site or a site where, I don't know, we've got complicated forms or something like that, or we've got AJAX requests going backwards and forwards. Can you think of things where you would say, actually, no, we're not for you?
Yeah, of course. There is no suitable for every kind of website, this technology. When we built HardyPress, we had in mind a specific target of sites that are the classic brochure websites with pages, who we are, what we do, services, news, content, and so on. This kind of websites don't need really dynamic architecture, and they cover about 80% of the market.
Yes.
Instead, we had several use cases of sites that have implemented e-commerce, booking system, and other dynamic stuff capable of working on HardyPress, thanks to third-party service, like, for example, HVID for e-commerce, Bats24 for booking system, Discourse on or Discuss for comment system. Yeah. You can usually use a third-party service to create a dynamic feature on your website. Regarding WooCommerce, as long as you use it for creating products, showcase, and catalogs, you can use it with HardyPress. There is no problem.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the cart and the checkout feature cannot work on a serverless architecture.
It makes perfect sense, though. You know, you're not trying to convince anybody that your product is suitable for everybody. You've got a very specific user in mind. As we described, 80% of the market, it's a brochure site. It's not being fiddled with too much. You just want something static. One thing that interests me, though, is forms, because there's a need to interact with the server in some way for every form. How do you handle like a basic contact form?
Yeah, this is a good question. Thank you for asking, because we managed to make contact form working, and even the search inside of the site, the full text search working. With this, is quite complicated. I mean, the contact form, we support only contact form 7 for the moment.
That's very popular, well understood plugin. Yeah.
If you use it, everything will work seamlessly. Okay. So validation, email contents, recipients, everything will work as always. Because what we do is that when you start your WordPress, we inject a plugin inside your WordPress that allow us to read your configuration, your contact form configuration.
Right.
Then on the static websites, when someone submits a contact form, there's not the WordPress server that can receive this data, but we receive this data. Okay, so we receive this kind of data, and we have your configuration, so we can act exactly like contact form 7. So we can validate the form, we can forward the email, and we can do all the stuff usually contact form does.
Right.
More than this, we have also a Zapier app.
Okay.
So you can integrate your contact form with MailChimp, with Google Drive, Dropbox, and everything else.
Yep.
Regarding the search box, it's quite the same, because after we created the static copy, we have an Elasticsearch index where your content is recorded. So we can make your search working, even if the website is static.
Yeah, really interesting, because I was puzzled by how you would do contact forms and things. And I mean, you've answered it perfectly. You've basically built out something which works out what contact form 7 is going to do.
Yeah.
And then you build something on top of that. So you've got some infrastructure in your platform which mimics Contact Form 7. And actually,
Exactly.
you know what? Contact Form 7 is good. It doesn't have the bells and the whistles, but then again, that's not what your platform is aiming at, is it? If you want super duper complicated forms through Gravity Forms, for example, well, this won't be for you. But if you've got a brochure site, perfect.
We are working hard for Gravity support, but it's not ready yet.
Oh, really? Okay, so the same idea. You've got to presumably work out every permutation of what a Gravity Form can do.
Yeah, this is why it takes longer.
Yeah, that's nasty. Yeah, that's bad. Yeah. That's hard work. This won't necessarily appeal to our audience because we're all WordPress users, but I am interested because this technology stack that you've got, Docker and so on, it feels like you could deploy this to other CMSs, so let's say Drupal or Magento or something. Is that something that you do or are looking at?
At the moment, we choose to host only WordPress-based websites. We will support other technology eventually, but currently WordPress covers more than 30% of the existing web. It has a huge ecosystem with thousands of beautiful themes, great plugins. So our effort is currently focused on expanding the support for the highest number of plugins possible. Because just an example, every composer has no problem with HardyPress because use, for example, Elementor, Visual Composer. This is all stuff that work on the back end. It's fine with HardyPress. There's no problem at all. But the Visual Composer data grid is a single element of Visual Composer, loads the contents with Ajax.
Yes.
Okay, so this cannot work on a static site. So we have to, we did it, but it's not so simple.
Yes.
So every single plugin must be tested.
Are there
and
any?
Then we can say it's compatible.
Are there any notable plugins apart from contact form plugins that you would advise us? Actually, we're not really compatible with those just yet.
Sorry, what is the question?
So are there any plugins that you would tell us we shouldn't install on HardyPress? Can you think of anything apart from form plugins? Can you think of anything which you would say actually that does not fit on our platform?
Usually there are plugins for, as you said, for create forms.
Yep.
You should use contact form. Okay. WooCommerce.
Yep.
If you want to use the cart feature, otherwise it's fine.
Yep.
Then there are some plugins that, for example, load the content from social network.
Okay.
These kind of plugins are not supported yet. You have to load the content client side. So you can embed the Twitter widget, embed the YouTube widgets, but it must be done client side.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Booking a survey system.
Yep.
You have to replace this plugin with some external service.
Yep. But
that is quite good. I mean, if you start thinking static, like I did several years ago, because you can create almost everything static. Okay. If you already have a business running on WooCommerce, okay, I would not advise you to move to HardyPress, okay, because it's going to be a huge work to migrate everything from WooCommerce to HVid and build a static website. You have to replace almost everything.
Yes.
Instead, but if you think from scratch in a static way, you can build almost everything.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, it really is interesting. I mean, obviously the main purpose is to speed it up, is just to make everything quicker.
And secure.
Yeah, of course. Yes, security. You can't hack an HTML. Well, I mean, I suppose you could rewrite some text or something, I guess. But the security. Because there's no plugins running. There's no PHP going on. There's no database. What's to hack really? Fascinating. What I would say is, I'm going to ask Claudio to, when we put this live, I'm sure that it will generate a certain amount of interest. Perhaps if you've got some questions, you could either put the comments in the WP Builds on the the page that this podcast episode is on, or go into our Facebook group at wpbuilds.com/Facebook. And Claudio's name is spelt Claudio, and Benvenuti is Benvenuti. And you could find him on Facebook and ask him questions if you've got a more technical, a more difficult question. But to me, it feels like if you've got a client who's desperately into getting their site screaming fast, looks like this might be something of interest, shall we say. So, Claudio, if it's okay with you, I'm going to say thank you very much. I would particularly like to point out that Claudio was asking me quite a few times in the run up to this recording if his English was going to be okay, and I think you've done an amazing job keeping up with my questions. So thank you for taking the time and talking to us today.
And today's ending term is SERPs, which stands for Search Engine Results Page. But Nathan, you've thrown me out on this one, because really, are we talking about page anymore when we're talking about search engine results?
No, it should just be called SER, shouldn't it? SER, yeah. Because now it's just search engine results. I remember joyfully at the beginning of the internet searching around. We had loads and loads of rival, what could be described as search engines, although the modern definition of search engine is different. But we had things like Alta Vista. There was a whole load of things. There was Yahoo, but in the beginning they weren't really search engine results. They were just directory sites that you could go to, and you'd drill down if you wanted to find out about holidays. You'd go to the tourism section and then whatever, and hopefully you'd find something. And I remember submitting a few client sites to these things, and you had to prove which section you went in, and so on. They died. Google came along, dominated the market. Everybody who wanted to have any skin in the game tried to copy Google. But they're a complicated beast now. And like you say, they're no longer a search engine results page. It's now just it's like a never-ending screed. It just goes on and on. I'm looking on my desktop. I searched the word web, and it just goes on and on. I don't think it would ever end. I'm sure there'd be literally billions of results. And that little thing that you used to see with all the O's of Google lined up, 22 O's, and now, according to something I read this morning, can't remember, possibly TechCrunch or something like that, they're going to deploy the same strategy on mobile. They're going to start having it just as an infinite scrolling page. So it kind of puts paid to those SEO people who say, we'll get you onto the first page of Google. Well, everybody's on the first page of Google now. Every last one of us. Do you use search engine results a lot? Do you find yourself trawling through Google as much as you once did, or do you find yourself finding things, I don't know, via Facebook or whatnot now?
Yeah. Do you know what? I think that I have changed a lot. I think because of these Facebook groups, which brought us together. I'm following leads from Facebook. I'm pretty sure I have changed a lot.
Yeah, I find myself finding a lot of things, and it must be Google's absolute nightmare. And they've done an awful lot to change their product. And over time, simply got a list of products now. I've just typed in the word Sainsbury's, which is a supermarket in the UK, and now you get all sorts of interesting things. You get the Sainsbury's logo. They'll figure out where you are and put pins in a map about where the nearest ones are. They write their telephone numbers, opening hours. So it's not really just a link anymore to a web page. It's now trying to be the place to find answers, not just to where's this web page, but the answers to questions. And I think it's really compelling. My slight fear with Google, though, is that once beautiful, clutter-free interface. Obviously, the homepage still is, but now it seems to be getting bogged down with all sorts of things like Twitter feeds and pictures from YouTube and all of that kind of stuff. And a lot of this stuff, I kind of wish they didn't do it and just turned it off, because I do trust the Google algorithm. And generally speaking, if I type in a search, I will do what everybody else does and go for the first 2 or 3 and hope that it's got it correct. So, yeah, there we go.
It's got to be changing, hasn't it? We mentioned schema markup before, and that's changing, isn't it? The results that we get.
Yeah. Right, so there you go. That is search engine results page, or search engine results as it should now be called. I'm sure you all knew what that was anyway, but it's fun.
Indeed.
Right, we will end this podcast on that note and say thanks for listening. It's been a pleasure having you listening right to the end once again. My name's Nathan Wrigley.
And I'm David Walmsley.
And as always, some dreadful music will be fading in, and we will say ta-ta for now. Have a nice week, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.